Good morning. We journey through chapter 6, 7, and 8 of the book of Esther this morning. And as we finished chapter 5 yesterday, we see Haman, going to bed, just pleased with himself, with his plan to get rid of Mordecai in the morning. But during that night, the king is sleepless, it says. And in some versions of the book of Esther, it says that the king was sleepless because of divine intervention. It doesn't say that in the Hebrew scriptures, rather, but it just says that he was unable to sleep. So he gave orders for the book of records to come. And as they were reading through that, they read the part where Mordecai had informed of the plot to take the king's life. And the king wondered, has anything ever been done to honor Mordecai? To honor him for uncovering the plot, for saving the king's life. And nope, nothing had ever been done. What distinction had been done for Mordecai? Nothing ever. So, and just at that point in time, Haman comes into the court. He's excited in the morning, because, he's going to hang Mordecai, get rid of Mordecai. He's going to have the evening banquet with the king and the queen at the queen's request, at the queen's residence. What could be better? I mean, his day was going great. He was, again, kind of full of himself and all excited and everything. So the king asks, who is available, who is around right now? And so Haman was there. And he had every right to be there and everything. So the king says, let him come in. And the king asks a question, what should be done for someone who has done exemplary things for the king? What should be done? What honor should be given to someone who has, done something great? And of course, Haman thinks, man, it's me. And so he says, well, let him be dressed in fine robes, the king's fine robes, and let a horse be brought so that he might, and have a royal crown put on his head so that he might be paraded around the town and everybody see him and give praise and glory and honor to this man, thinking, of course, it's going to be himself. And think how mortified he was when he found out it was Mordecai and not himself. And, it was just, what a horrible thing to happen. You think you got yourself up on this pedestal and all of a sudden, boom, you're cut right down to the ground. And the person that you've been desiring to get rid of, this person who's a thorn in your side, is going to get this high honor that you thought you should get. But he has no choice but to do so. The king says, quickly take the robes and the horse of you as said, and go to the Jew Mordecai, and leave out nothing that you have mentioned. And just imagine having to go and pay honor to somebody you can't stand, really. It's how difficult would that be? And yet he didn't dare to go against the king. But when he got home, he was letting his feelings be known to his wife and to some of his close friends. And they gave him the news. It says, if Mordecai, be whom your downfall has begun, is of Jewish, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him. They didn't know how true that was. And as this was going on, throughout the day, it was time now for the queen's banquet. And the king sends people then to get Haman to come to the queen's banquet. And they come. And the king asks, what is your petition? What do you desire of me, Queen Esther? What is it? What it shall be granted. And this is what she says. If I have won your favor, and if it pleases the king, my life be given me, that is my petition. The lives of my people, this is my request. And the king doesn't know that she's Jewish. Haman doesn't know that she's Jewish. They don't really know what's going on, but they figure it out. And she says, if we'd have simply been sold into slavery, I would have kept my peace. The others, I could have lived with that because they would live. But here the order is given that on the 13th day of the month, my people will be annihilated. We will be no more. And, the Israelites are God's chosen people. And God continually, even though they're out of favor with God right now, God finds a way to intervene so that his chosen people will not be annihilated. And the king asks, well, who is it that has done this against your people? Because she still hasn't said that she's a Jew. And she said, it is Haman. He, a foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman. And I can just imagine, she just points her finger at him. This guy right here is the one who's done all that. And, it says he was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king got up, filled with anger, and just, he was beside himself with anger at Haman and the duplicity, the trickery that Haman had come about with this that way. I mean, it was completely Haman's idea to have this letter written up and all of that. And as the king then comes back into the banquet hall where the queen was, he finds Haman sprawled out on the couch, beside the queen, and he assumes that that Haman has assaulted the queen, and he's very upset. And then somebody says, "Look, the gallows that Haman had erected are right outside, and the king has Haman hung on that gallow that that Haman had erected, so that he could hang Mordecai on it." What a change of events, for Haman to go from being the king's right-hand man to fall completely out of favor, so much so that the king had him put to death. And Mordecai, who had been virtually unknown to the king, but a thorn in the side only because he wouldn't bow down to Haman, only because he wouldn't, try to build Haman up with, to praise and honor him like a god. This was against Mordecai's beliefs and everything. But, so Haman is caught up in his own trap that way. And just, his downfall is his own self-righteousness, his own anger at Mordecai, and is unable to deal with this insurrectionist Mordecai who won't bow to him, and it's, so then Haman is now out of the way, but yet the edict is still there that has been written by Haman and the advisors and signed with the king's ring, and this order is still out there for all the Jews to be killed on the 13th day of the month. And Esther says again to the king, pleading with him to avert the evil that was designed by Haman. If it pleases the king, and if it seems I've won his favor, and if I have his approval, let an order be written to revoke the letter devised by Haman. So she doesn't blame the king for it. She says this letter was devised by Haman, and it was. We can read that earlier, but it was signed with the king's signet ring, and she pleads with him, and then the king says, "You may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring. For an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked." Evidently, though, that a new order that is signed by the king and sealed by the king could revoke an older order. I mean, because the other order that had been written by Haman was signed with this king's ring, or sealed with the king's ring. But here the king is revoking that order that was written, devised by Haman, and maybe language was in there that way. But it's an executive order. I mean, it has to be carried out. And this was what it was. It was an executive order from the king. But the king countermanded that order in favor of the Jews. And it says the king's secretaries were summoned at that time in the 3rd month on the 23rd day this edict was written. So they had plenty of time to get this out and around to all of the villages and It was 127 provinces. I think yesterday I might have said 117, not remembering correctly that way. But you know, the letters were written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sent out to all of the people that way. And then as chapter 8 ends at verse 15, it says, Mordecai went out from the presence of the king, wearing the royal robes of blue and white and great golden, purple, and the Jews were filled with joy and gladness. And this putting on the robe, the royal robe, remember in the Gospels, the parable of the prodigal son, the loving father, whichever way you want to call it. When the father sees the son coming back, what does he say? Take a robe and put on him. Clothe him. And so this is an honor. So the king's robe is there, and he's honoring the Jews. And our reading ends today with many people professed to be Jewish because they were afraid of the Jews. I mean, I don't understand that, being afraid of the Jews, because the Jews weren't trying to do anything to anybody. They were simply living and being who they were. But yet the plot to eradicate the Jews had been overthrown, and I can only see God's hand at work in and through all of those things. And as I said before, there are many lessons that we learn, of this, and one of them is, pride. One of them is compassion. Just understanding, being tolerant of others. There are many things that this story, as we read through it, that we are reminded of, that we are taught. And one of the things, the main thing that the Bible teaches us, is that God loves us, each and every one.